me, music is all about being in the moment, capturing the intensity, the energy, and just leaving it all out there. What's the most important to me is that it's captured and it's recreated faithfully. If I'm trying to convey a sound, a tone, a feel, a vibe, I need an engineer that's going to feel that with me. The engineer, as a trio, is the fourth member of the band.
When I work with an artist, it's important for me to have some conversation with them and learn more about them, learn what they like, what kind of music they like, what kind of movies they watch, sounds that they're looking for. It allows me to plan ahead for our sessions and the gear that I'm going to use. Carbon initially for me started as a mobile rig. Easy to take along, had the mic pre's and everything that I needed to get the job done, whatever it was. And now with the new Carbon Pre, I'm able to expand the Carbon from 8 inputs to 16 or even 24 inputs, which not only makes it the ultimate mobile rig, but also something that I'm ready to put into my main studio as my main rig. I think probably first and foremost, my favorite part about the Carbon Pre's are the pre's. They are clean, there's plenty of headroom. It allows me to capture whatever it is that the artist is putting out. If it's a warm guitar tone, you hear that. There's no coloration in these mic pre's. It's portable, it's easy to use, and it sounds amazing. We all have those moments where, you know, a song takes us back to somewhere. We're creating something right now that's going to be that for someone. What we're doing today is going to outlast all of us. So make it count.
All right, all right. So thank you for joining us today for the Pro Tools Carbon and Pro Tools Carbon Pre-webinar. We're going to do a little bit of housekeeping real quick, and then we'll jump into some introductions. So it's just going to be myself and two other gentlemen up here chatting with you guys today. So if you'd like to, up on the top right-hand corner where the gallery view is, you can go and hide all non-video participants, and that way it'll just be the three of us. And that'll be that. If you guys have any questions while we're talking, and hopefully you do, this is the place to ask them. Please, down in the bottom where the Q&A icon is, go ahead and type your questions in. We have a whole group of people keeping track of all your questions that'll be able to answer for you guys live. So without further ado, Sam and Barry, if you can turn your cameras on and your mics on, we'll make some introductions and we'll get going. So we have Mr. Sam Pura over here on my right. He is with Panda Studios, and also he's out in the Bay Area, and he also has a new plugin company called Purified. So Sam, what's up with the pandas?
So I named the panda after the infamous baby panda that was born in the San Diego Zoo. It was like one of the first webcams that, you know, was a 24-hour live stream. So I would always tune into that when I was in audio school. And so when it came time to make my recording studio MySpace page, I needed to choose a recording studio name. So I decided to name it the Panda, which was a very different approach than most of the studio names around here, especially for being a rock and metal guy. So it always kind of confused people why it was called Panda. And I still get a lot of spam mail where they think I'm a Panda Express restaurant, and they offer me a bunch of restaurant products. So pretty funny, but yeah, I love the name.
That's great. So tell us a little bit about Purified.
So Purified is my plugin company. The entire motto and theme of the company is we are trying to make pro audio workflows simplified. And so I have been putting all of those workflows into very simple and streamlined plugin interfaces that will are complete turnkey solutions for any music creator, and are going to increase efficiency, tones, and morale and workflow. So We have a brand new plugin coming out tomorrow. It is called the Micro Limiter. It is the biggest little compressor of all time. It's massively small, and it's awesome, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
That's a great tagline. I love it. I noticed you had some really fun names for your plugins too.
Yeah, thanks.
They're pretty cool. And also over to, I guess he's on my right, is Mr. Barry Pointer. He's out in the LA area. He's an engineer, producer, and primarily records Gibson brands, but along with other artists. And he also has a little penchant for woodwork and designing studio furniture. What's up with that, Barry?
Well, after years of just, painfully looking for the perfect piece that I wouldn't change anything about it, I realized that's not going to happen. And so I called a buddy and I said, let's get in the garage and let's make something and just see if it works. And it did. It was great. And then the more people saw it, the more people will, would ask where it came from. I'm like, we made it, kind of reluctantly saying it, and then we built a bunch of stuff for Gibson. I built a bunch of stuff for other friends who have studios, and we thought, let's do this. Let's make this a main thing. And then we quickly realized, no, we're doing this out of a garage. We don't have the manpower or the time for a second day job, if you will. So we kind of, keep it quiet, but we still do stuff. We just finished a studio build out for someone, and we are actually building out as we speak a studio for Scott Ian from Anthrax. So that's he's building a new studio in his home, and it's cool.
That's
as long
very
as
cool.
it's spread out, it's fine. It just I'm so busy with other stuff that is my day job with Gibson and other artists. I work with John Five, who's now the new guy in Motley Crue, and doing a record with Peter Criss from Kiss.
Nice.
So I'm bouncing back from my end of the continent to your end, Mark. I'm out in Jersey when I do that.
That's an excellent segue. My name is Mark Corbin, and I am the Senior Product Manager for Professional Systems, Audio Systems here with Avid. So Carbon and Carbon Pre are two of my products, along with SyncX and HDX cards, as well as the Matrix and Matrix Studio. And I'm sure there are a few other little bits and bobs kind of floating around there. As Barry mentioned, I'm out here in New Jersey, just outside of Manhattan. When I'm not aviding, I mix for the World Surf League, which is a lot of fun. I get to pretend I'm in all these places. And when I'm not doing that or being a dad, I usually try to get out into the woods and off the grid a little bit and have a little bit of peace and quiet. But anyway, enough about me. We're here to talk about Carbon and Carbon Pre. So we really have three main topics that we're going to just kind of chat about. We're going to talk about Carbon and how it's expandable, not just from the literal sense with Carbon Pre, but also just how it can expand your workflow and some other things like that. We're going to have a little conversation about the mic pre's, why we like them, what's cool about them, get some more stories from Barry and Sam, and some commentary from them on that. And then we're just going to talk a little bit about how Carbon keeps it simple and how we've, made a lot of effort to keep things simple with this interface and Pro Tools to reduce the friction so that you guys can be creative and make music and have fun and not have to be all techie. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing this PowerPoint, and we'll just jump right into talking about Carbon and expansion. So let's stop sharing. Cool. So Barry, you were in the video that we showed at the top with Jared James Nichols. When we shot that video, you guys shot it both in a live space, but also were able to take it back to a mixed space too.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, you made mention in the video too, about how it was a portable rig for you?
Yeah, it the whole thing with Carbon initially started out as a mobile piece for me, and the over on YouTube on the Gibson TV page, there is a piece with the band Vintage Trouble, which sums up a lot. And that was the first time I used Carbon on the full band, unplugged, and it came out amazing. And what's even, I guess, maybe a little crazy for me is I actually bought the unit the night before. And so, I think that the way that thing turned out is a testament to how many things, but how quick and easy the thing is to use. But with the Jared James Nichols thing, it was great because it was, I added the Carbon the pre's to expand the unit to 24 inputs, and we went into a space called the Den Studios here in LA, which is a showcase type space, and they have a control room. So I set up out in the live room with the band, and we did it right there as if we would in a live music venue or anything like that, and then was able to take it back into their control room and plug in and use their setup to do a mix down on it. And again, it couldn't be a simpler unit for something like that, because no more am I taking a rolling in a rack that it takes two people to load in the car to go to do a live mobile recording. I'm taking a Carbon and one or two of the Carbon pre's, and then just a few miscellaneous things, and that's it. It's super simple. The fact that anybody who's recorded in a live environment knows that it's short of impossible to get perfect input levels and all that. Something's always changing. I'm a guitar player. I'm as guilty. You walk on stage, you do your sound check, everything's great. You walk on stage, first thing you do is you reach back and turn your amp up. There's all kinds of variables in that kind of a situation. So, with the units being 32-bit float, it kind of protects you in that environment, in that situation. So, I mean, I can go on all day about how great the unit is on so many different things, but as a mobile rig, it couldn't be simpler, and I fell in love with it so much that I now have it here. It's my main rig also, so which makes it even better, because whatever I'm doing in the studio, whatever I'm taking mobily, it's everything's the same. It's a beautiful thing.
I've heard a lot of engineers who enjoy its portability, even though it's an RU, it's a rack space. It's not huge, it's not super heavy.
No,
but like you said, it's not a rack of gear.
I have a Pelican that has some custom layered foam that they just set in. I got room for any mics or any other things that I'm taking, and I roll one thing in, and that's it.
Nice.
It's great.
I was actually just talking with the studio out in Portland yesterday, and similar to what you described doing, just kind of being in the space with the band. They were wanting to do the exact same thing in one of their large spaces, just having kind of like an open air recording space. So there was no glass, right? They could just be there and be creative and have fun. But one of the topics that came up with them that I'm interested to get both your perspective on, Barry, and yours too, Sam. One of the things that they had said was when they track now, it's not like you track and then you go back and mix. It's like the artist is always expecting a final mix while you track. I was curious if you guys have had a similar experience. Is that is that what people are demanding and need, and does this help you at all?
Sam?
I mean, I think that when people play music, they want to hear it coming out of the speakers sounding like an album at all times, especially when they come to the control room or they're listening to their headphones. So like turning on the mastering limiter on stage one and like actually trying to make everything sound great as opposed to just capturing is the new process. It has been for me for a long time. And like a good point of that is the fact that with the Carbon, you have the latency free option of using a bunch of the plugins that have DSP, so you can actually start building in all that sound with no latency to the player and just immediately as you're tracking.
Yeah, I'm the same. And I've been doing it, for a while too. I think we're in a different time for everything that we do. And for an artist to be able to hear something like it's going to sound like in the end along the way, I think it adds to the creative process. It adds to the confidence level that an artist has in what we're doing, which then gets better performances out of them. And along the way, it's also, to be honest, it's a big time saver in the end. Okay, we're done tracking now. We've got everything. I'll see you in a week when I'm done with the mix. No, I'm pretty much just tweaking a few things, and in a day, here's what we did. And then with the latency free, being able to hit that little button on a track and lay something in that we didn't think of as an overdub. No more am I going to have to go through and freeze tracks or deactivate all these things just so that we can lay something, a 3-second guitar fill or something like that. I hit the button on the track we're going and it does it for me. And, so we're constantly moving. It doesn't take up the time that stuff like that used to.
Yeah.
No bouncing mixes, and all that kind of stuff.
I say it comes up a lot, especially when we're talking about, like the portability, like just being able to take it from one space to another, and you're mixing while you're tracking, and then you go back to, your space and you're, doing some final touches, but then you decide you need to do some, some punch-ins or some overdubs or something like that. And like you said, it's not like you actually need to go and freeze your tracks or, deactivate things. You can just, have them come in and punch right in.
Well, it's just, a process for me always was that, once we get the music to a point where we're happy with now, we're going to work on some vocals, then, I would bounce stems and start a whole new session that was just dedicated to vocals. I don't have to do that now.
Yeah.
I just hit that button and we're good to go. Everything's in the same place.
Nice. I wanted to talk a little bit about the mic preamp control. It's nothing super new with Carbon Pre. We've always had it with, Carbon being able to, control the mic pre's directly from Pro Tools, but also on a control surface, S1, S3 dock, S6, whatever. Do you guys leverage that and, recall presets and things like that, especially if, like we were just talking about, overdubs or anything like that, where you're having to go back to a mix and you want to just recall the exact settings that you had on the mic?
Yeah, all the time. Being able to save track presets with plugins or signal chains and stuff is great, but now to be able to do that with the mic presetting as well, and not having to be concerned necessarily with matching levels, from what we had before. Now it's all saved in the track.
Nice.
Yeah, I used to have I actually still have two of them, the original Digi Pre 8, and I would run the MIDI interface to run that as mic control. And it's awesome because, most people use external mics, if they're at that phase, if they're using like an HDIO or something like that. So not many people are familiar with the mic preamp control inside of Pro Tools, but the fact that obviously is paired with the Carbon, and now that you can, not only can you control the mic preamp, but you can save that with your session. So I always try to have drums set up in my other room there where the Carbon's sitting. And that way I could just open a template and it would all be the exact same settings every single time. Mm-hmm. It's pretty amazing.
Yep. It's pretty flexible. I'm a fan.
Well, and with the Gibson Songbook, for example, that series, it's all about artists doing things unplugged, stripped down. And it's the same thing. We do them primarily in the same venues all the time. And so I have a preset that's for that based on what the makeup of the band is. If it's 2 guitars and vocal or percussion, whatever it is, and it's a starting point and it saves so much time.
Nice. So we're chatting about the mics or the mic pre's, and so yay, we have control over them from Pro Tools. We can recall them, and it's really flexible and it's convenient. But I get a lot of feedback from folks who are either like waffling on wanting to pull the trigger on a carbon, or who aren't waffling, they just don't want to do it, because they're like it's an interface mic pre, they're subpar, just because they're an interface mic pre. I know from an engineering standpoint, we worked real hard to make them sound really, really great. They're the same mic pre's that we use on our SXL systems, our consoles that tour the world, which sound incredible. They're the same mic pre's that we used on Inbox as well. So we got a nice family of mic pre's. What are y'all's opinions of our mic pre's?
Yeah, so I think the fun thing about the mic preamps is like my first interface was a 001 and then a 002. And it's like, at that time, it's like in order to expand those, it's nice to have an optional external ADAT preamp. So you always like put a lot of thought process into what external preamps you would have. And at that time, it was like, I'll just use my 002 preamps on like, I don't know, like mono room, something that's like not too important or something, or like outkick and bottom snare or something. And so we always naturally disregard the onboard preamps of an interface. And so I have a lot of really nice preamps and I'm a preamp guy. And what I find so interesting is like when you actually like start, A/B in between preamps, like we put all this emphasis on how important they sound, and they actually have like really minimal differences. Like we think that they have more like differences than they actually do. But what I found so interesting when I actually used the carbon preamp is it sounded like, it was like all of a sudden all my mic preamp sounds before were like 1080 dB, and now they were HDR 4K. It just sounded incredible. And what I could hear for the first time ever is I could hear the negative harmonic distortion characteristics that were associated with like my Neve transformers or like my API op amps. Like those things actually stood out to me so much more when comparing to the carbon preamp, because they sound like these things that have this pointless Instagram filter in the way of me and my audio. And to have that removed and hear the actual sources and like actually hear my microphones, for example, it was incredible. And it's like, we use this word clean, and I think a lot of people associate clean as like sterile and not cool and just, it doesn't have vibe. But like, I couldn't believe how awesome they sounded and how clean they sounded. It completely changed my perspective on preamps and like my interface setup here. Like, truthfully, if I only had carbon preamps to record everything on, I'd be completely satisfied. There would be no like gassing for the 1073 preamp or my cool Cappy VP28s. Like, they're all fine, but I would rather use the carbon preamps if possible.
Yeah, I agree with Sam. I think, be careful about saying this, we're taught to believe a lot of things, and we are taught to think that you have to have a certain thing for a certain sound. And some of that is true. Yes, there is a distinct sound to a Neve, whether it's a 1084 or 1073 or the APIs, same thing. I'm a fan of the API 312. I love it on guitars and bass. I love it on snare and kick. And I have those. And I use them. But when you get down to it, the carbon pre's, I think I said it maybe in the Jared video, they deliver what you're putting into it. And I am a less is more guy. I don't want to do any more work than I have to. I just don't, And if I do have to do more work than is necessary, then somebody didn't do something right. And it's probably me in the engineering phase. So, getting a great, I think, sometimes people don't understand so much. For example, getting a great guitar tone. You go in the live room, you go in the room, wherever it's at, and you're sitting in front of that amp, and you get the great tone and everything. But getting that to translate on tape, so to speak, or in the computer as we are now, it's not the same. So you have to do make some adjustments and tweaks that you might not normally listen to in a live room, but the way it comes through the speakers and so on. But again, what carbon pre's do is they take a lot of that out. You don't have you know, running a guitar amp through a microphone, through an SM57, through a 1073. That 1073 is adding something to it, no doubt. So you're not maybe necessarily getting that pure guitar tone that you've worked so hard to set. With something like what the Carbon Pre's have, you are getting that, and there's so much headroom. There's no issues, concerns with that at all. You can push them a little bit, and after the fact, because it is so clear of a translation, if you decide in the mix that you want to drive it a little bit more with an outboard pre or something like that, you can. And there's nothing getting in the way of that. But to be able to rely on the quality of these preamps and to take a 16 or 24 channel, or just the Carbon even at 8 channels, into a situation that you don't have outboard pre's with you, no problem. You're going to get something that you're probably going to like a lot more just using the onboard stuff.
I am not a hardware engineer, but I worked very closely with some. And we, the converters on these preamps, we use multiple A to D converters on each input. We actually use 4 A to D converters on every input. And the best analogy that I could come up with the hardware engineering crew was akin to taking like an HDR image, where you take one with a really high exposure and one with a really low exposure, and then combine the two so you can get a really nice clean, crisp image. So it's something that we do on these mic preamps as well. And I think it really lends to a lot of the stuff that you guys are talking about.
Well, and I think history pre this, other brands and stuff, there is a lot to be said about onboard pre's being, maybe not so good. And I've experienced it. I'm sure most of us have. And so, there is that dark cloud to get past, but people really need to think beyond that and give this, give this an opportunity to show that it's different. It is 100% different than any other unit out there with onboard mic pre's.
So one of the other things that I think you had made mention of it, Barry, in the video, but we've kind of talked about it around here before too, is that on Carbon and Carbon Pre for that matter, since it leverages AVB as a connection to Pro Tools, to the host, it's actually 32-bit float point the whole way. So from just after those stacked A to D converters, we have 32-bit floating point from there all the way into the Pro Tools mixer, and the Pro Tools mixer all the way back out to the D to A, which again gives us a ton of dynamic range and makes everything just sound, in my opinion, nice and big and open, and it's really nice.
Mark, I'm curious if you could do a better explain like on 532 point float to me, like you did the HDR imaging, because I liked your analogy there. I'd love to hear, because I don't know how to explain it to anyone. I'd love to hear you sum it up for me.
Me too. I use it and I know how to use it, but to explain it, it's hard.
I'm gonna do a really bad job, to be honest. I should get Rich to hop in and explain it better. But essentially, it's a when we're talking bit depth, generally, right, we have 16 or 24 bits. When we talk about a 32-bit floating point, the dynamic range is much greater, and the floating point makes it extraordinarily difficult to clip when you're summing lots of samples together. Like I said, I probably butchered the topic altogether, but it does make a difference in the box.
I think that's a good explanation. I think on our end, on the using it out in that real world, it's just it just makes that whole capture process, I don't know what the right word is, safer, more comfortable, more reassuring.
It does, yeah,
in that world,
Yeah.
besides how great it sounds, but it saves you on that oh crap moment where somebody laid into the snare drum or cranked their amp on stage or anything changed for whatever reason.
Yeah. So one of the other things that we wanted to kind of talk about, aside from just the mic pre's and stuff like that, was how Carbon and Carbon Pre kind of makes your life easier, makes it simpler. I'm a bit of a science nerd, and I really like the concept of reducing friction or reducing mu, which is the coefficient of friction. So I'm interested to get your take on how using Carbon makes the work that you're trying to do better, easier, things like that.
Yeah, so I'll start, I guess. The first time I was introduced to the Carbon in general, it was two guys, John and Kyle from Avid, who came and hung out, and they basically were like, hey, we're designing a whole new interface, and like you are the exact target customer, and we want your advice and feedback and like get you involved on the project. And it was like, all right, this is amazing. And basically once they showed me it, it was literally like it was built for my second room that we use it in, which is the fact that it has 16 up to 24 ins and outs. It has built-in talkback. It's got multiple speaker output options, and therefore I can use that one unit, and it is my talkback, it is my monitor control, it is everything that is necessary to run audio in and out of the computer and through speakers and multiple headphone units. If I have 4 different artists, every single artist has their own dedicated mix. I don't have to use an external headphone amp for any of that. The entire thing that I need to run sessions exists on the Carbon. And the fact that the preamp connects the AVB to that, and we have all the mic preamp control, the entire studio over there is powered by Carbon. That is the only tool in the studio besides my little control surface. And it's just everything I could want from a setup. There's no other components necessary to do work every single day in that space.
Is it helpful because you're not having to bounce around between devices? Like you said, you got your monitor control, you have your talkback control, you have headphone outputs, you have all of it just right there. So
Exactly.
you're not having to bounce around to a bunch of different things.
Exactly.
Yeah, same thing for me. Going back to that first time I used it on the vintage troubleshoot, I picked up the unit about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Load in was at 8 o'clock the next morning. I came home and I fired it up and I loaded a session. I plugged some things in just to kind of get the feel of it. And I thought, I'm missing something. It's too easy. And then I get to the venue the next day and mic everything up. I'm just like, why is this not more difficult? I was like questioning myself that I had missed something in the process. And like I said earlier, I like to keep it simple. I don't need a lot of stuff to do what I do. I mean, is a lot of stuff fun? A lot of toys fun? Sure. But it's kind of like when you're a kid and you get a bunch of presents on Christmas Day and you don't even get to some of them till, a month later, and because you just got too much stuff or something like that. Maybe that's a bad comparison. But but the simplicity of it is just phenomenal. And it made my life easier. Sometimes the stuff that I do for Gibson is, like I said, it could be 15, 16 inputs on an unplugged thing to a Riff Lords episode with a guitarist who's telling stories about his riffs, and I literally need 4. But it doesn't matter. It's all right there in the same unit, and it just in the end, I know that when I get back to the studio to do the final, the mix and the edit or whatever it is I have to do on it to finish it, my job has already been made easier by the initial process of capturing the performance in the first place. And that's just it. That's, I have such a hard time mixing stuff that has been done by somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it's great, but it sometimes it's a lot more work than it should be. And which is, why I don't know, just one of the things about this, again, to me, in the beginning, it's about making the process as it goes easier. And Carbon does that for me.
So, Sam, what is something you just said? Barry reminded me, Sam commenting about having his ye old Avid pre's, to do the mic pre-control. Do you remember how you actually have to set those up, Sam?
You got to run into the MIDI hardware devices, and you have to open the correct peripheral and make sure that you're sending out to the correct one. And then you have to chain between the two units, and you have to say one is feeding two, so then this is MIDI channel 2 on that peripheral, and then have it come back in and test the loop sync, and then you have to go into identifying the microphone preamp and the other preamp control window, and choosing which is which. It was an annoying process that one of my freelance engineers that works out of here often, whenever I would go in there, I would see him controlling the mic preamp on the device, and it was like, man, you should just use this thing. And then it's like, oh, my MIDI interface wasn't powered or something like that was what was happening. So it was a clunky scenario, but it's completely streamlined now. And that's the other beauty of just a lot of the things that you guys have been doing is you're staying in one interface. You're making intuitive decisions in one interface. So if I'm oh wow, my mic preamp is clipping, I don't have to go, oh, which one over here? It's number channel 7, is that right? That has already taken way too much time away from me going to the fader on the input on the channel that I see it clipping and just pulling it down. It's amazing how streamlined the whole process is. And one thing that hasn't really been discussed at all, but it sounds really good, just like the converters themselves, like printing stems, and bouncing and doing things like that. They actually sound better on the Carbon than on my HD Thunderbolt rig. It's and I remember having that conversation with Jean-Marie Horvat. And he was just he had to redo an entire mix once he got the Carbon. He had to redo an entire album, print stems, and rebounce the entire thing because it was that dramatic of a difference for him, and and it sounds crazy when you talk about it like that, but it actually does really sound incredible. It's everything about it sounds incredible. Even just the internal architecture of running sessions through Carbon sounds incredible.
It does. And I recently put it in my studio as my main piece. I have been using the Thunderbolt native Avid HD IO for years. Absolutely love it. No complaints whatsoever. And the reason I switched over to the Carbon and the Carbon Pre's was, stay with me, was not because I needed the mic pre's. I have plenty of mic pre's. But now I have the luxury of having those mic pre's in addition, and being able to go to those things that I know I can get clean sounds out of in the studio, as I do in a mobile rig. And I agree with Sam, it sounds even better. And I, again, the HD native rig is amazing, and it sounds incredible. But there is something about this Carbon setup, and being able to set, in a session, we wear a lot of hats now. We don't have budgets we have an engineer, we have a producer, we have a mixer, we have an editor. We don't have those budgets anymore. We all tend to wear, we swap hats out in the process. And I don't need engineering issues to get in the way of the producer role and sitting in a room working with an artist to dig deep and find something that maybe they didn't even know that they had, and have to stop and say, oh, wait a minute, I need to change something, or I need to reroute something, or I need to adjust this level. And like Sam said, track it down. Okay, we're using this input, this patch, and this pre. You don't have to do that with this. And you don't want, nothing should ever get in the way of creativity. And when it's happening, when there's a moment, it's, I guess it could be equally said that when you're hitting a wall, but especially when there's a moment of creativity happening, and something special is coming, nothing should get in the way of stopping that. And whether it's, okay, let's fire up another vocal track to double this part or lay a harmony in or something, it's a matter of couple buttons, couple seconds, and we're up and rolling again. And so it just, it takes a lot of that work that, sometimes you just can't help but need an extra set or two of hands to make it flow. I can do it myself now.
I almost just want to end on that because it was really, that was really nice.
Hey,
but there's still more to talk about.
Quick side note, Barry, that was an incredible sounding snap. You have a really, really great studio snap.
Is that right? You hear that?
Yeah.
How's your snap, Sam? Is it good?
I'm
very
working
weak.
I'm working on perfecting my, almost like a flam snap. You never want those to be perfectly in time. You got to get them just off, just a little bit.
So, all right, back on track. Come on, guys. I'm like hurting a bunch of toddlers. So, Sam, you had mentioned a little bit earlier about the monitor section in Carbon, which I think is one of the things that gets kind of overlooked oftentimes when we're hunting around for interfaces. And I think it's one of the cool things that's not just, integrated into the box, but we worked really hard to integrate it into Pro Tools. And the way that you set it up and hardware setup, I think anyway, is incredibly intuitive compared to the way, setting up things in IO setup and hardware setup used to be, from being able to just mirror headphone outputs from your main left, right, to being able to build custom Q sends out the 4 headphone jacks. Do you guys, gosh, I hope you answer yes. Do you guys leverage the monitor section, or do you end up, you're just going out the DB25 to like a Dangerous or something else, or what do you guys end up doing?
I'm using the monitor section, and the other amazing feature is you can control the amount of dim decibel as well too, an important feature there too. But yeah, everything about the monitor section is great. It's phenomenal, and I really love just switching between it on the interface really quickly. It's super intuitive how the colors change, so you know which headphone you're on, and it's just everything about it is just really like elegant. It's a very beautiful design, and obviously everyone who worked on the design and creation of it really put the iPod simplicity into the process of its controls, and actually just giving you the controls that you need and the intuitive ability to be like, well, if I wanted to switch to this, how would I do that? Like what you intuitively do actually does that. It's not some clunky thing that you have to learn. It's just a very beautiful design.
I use the monitor section. I was going out into a Dangerous unit, which is one of the best, if not the best, of external monitor controllers on the market, as well as many of their other things. But I don't need it. It's just a piece that I don't need anymore. It's all right there. I can reach, and I got that button, like Sam said, that being able to switch your speakers outputs, your turn the monitors off, or the headphones on and off. For an artist, a lot of time I have an artist that I work with. We're doing vocals on the record right now. Does the vocals. He doesn't want to hear anything while I'm editing. While I'm going through and putting a comp together or layering or balancing something, it's easy for me to shut his headphones off, turn them right back on when they need to go on. It's great. And it's setting them up in hardware control couldn't be easier. The visual of it is it's very, very simple. You can't look at it and not understand it instantly and see what you need to do, what it is you're trying to do. I have friends who have studios that use great interfaces, but you almost have to be a software wizard just to set it up and get it going. I don't want that. I don't need that. I don't need that in-between thing. I don't need a separate control panel to do anything. I don't need any of that getting in the way of my process.
Yeah.
Not that it's bad. Some people may like that. That's not my workflow.
Keep it simple. Well, cool. I don't have a whole lot else to cover. We've kind of meandered through all the topics that I was interested in, chatting about during our time with this group. We got a really good group today. They're asking some good questions. Do you guys have anything that you want to kind of wrap up on? Talk about?
I think we covered pretty much all the cool features of the Carbon, so we were very well rehearsed and sounds great.
I think I agree. I think I think what makes it easy to talk about it and be excited about it and enthused about it and so on is that me personally, I use it every day, whether it's in the studio or if it's on a mobile situation. I use it every single day because I love it. That's just it. I'm not having to figure something out on it as I go constantly. And especially if you're a Pro Tools user, it just is like, it just makes all the sense in the world. And yes, it works with other DAWs as well. But if you're using Pro Tools, it just makes all the sense in the world. And again, going back to, I used to be that gear hound where I just collected stuff. And, I had so much gear that maybe wasn't so versatile, but it did one thing that was amazing. So I think I would have to keep it around for that one thing. And then that one thing just never came. I'm not that person anymore. I want to keep it simple. And this unit is just from again, all the features, the talkback, the monitor control, the headphone control, the outputs, the preamps, everything that's there, it's there. And it's amazing. Whether somebody is starting from scratch or upgrading their current situation or looking to kind of make it simpler for what they already have in their pro situation, it fits.
Cool. Thank you for the words. I know it's easy for me to say because I'm supposed to say all this stuff. I actually do believe it's a great box. It sounds awesome. It's really simple and intuitive to use and really, allows you to just focus on being creative and being, with the artist or making your own music or whatever. Which is something that I really like about it. But Sam and Barry, thank you guys for joining me today and telling everybody, some of your stories and your thoughts and your opinions on it. It's very much appreciated. And I think it has, it has a whole lot more weight just rather than me just being up here, talking about, stack data Ds and hybrid engines and, things like that, which are, valuable and important. But you can just look that stuff up online. But I think it's invaluable to have folks like you guys here who do this for a living, who are in the trenches, being creative, recording things, making music, and talking about your process and talking about, what helps you do it. And I think it's really cool. So thank you guys so much for being here. I saw we had a really good turnout today, which is fantastic. I think I was seeing lots of, Q&As kind of float by while we were all chatting, which was also great. So I hope you guys all got your questions answered. If you didn't, this will be, you can always, go by, avid.com and take a look at all the Carbon information. Myself and a lot of the pre-sales guys who've also been helping answer the questions. We're regularly on social and on the doc to help answer questions too. So please feel free to swing by and ask questions if there is anything that we didn't talk about or answer for you guys today. And I think with that, thank you guys all for coming and joining and spending a little bit of time with us this afternoon. And hopefully we'll get to do it again sometime with the next box.
Thank you for having me. Love it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Barry.
Yeah, thank